from students all over the district. Thank you to everyone who participated and sent in questions. We hope you get the answers you wanted. We also want to thank Bull County Superintendent Mike LaFavers for joining us here to help clear up the minds of everyone wondering what the 2021 school year will look like in the end.
So, Mr. LaFavers, I know some students, including myself, might know a lot about you, or a lot about what you do. But would you like to just give everybody a little bit about your job and what's been going on these last couple weeks in the superintendent's office?
Yeah. So first, I'd like to say just to Jack and Daniel, thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity today. So I've got the best job there is. I get to be involved in the lives of students, albeit I'm not, as close to them as teachers are or even their principals, but I'm on the business side more or less to make sure you have the resources you need and that the strategic planning is there for, whatever the students need us to be thinking through. And so, obviously the last few months has been really difficult in that. All of a sudden, in the middle of March, we had to change completely our instructional approach, how we deliver food or get food to students, a lot of safety considerations. And then not only that, do we have to think about how to get through that school year, and then, of course, graduation at the end of it, but then how do we pivot into next school year? So the strategic planning aspect of the last few months has been more than you normally see in a spring.
So you came from, did you teach at Bull County, correct?
I did, yeah. Taught in Garrett for 2 years, Boyle 9, and then I became the middle school principal. And then I became the chief academic officer, assistant superintendent for only 1 year, and I've been superintendent for 11 years.
Being in the classroom, you know a lot about students. So you know how a lot of students feel when it goes through some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think to do the job I'm doing, you need to have been a teacher and a principal. It's important as well. Both those jobs are pretty important. But, this is a unique time, so it's hard for a 52-year-old man to put myself completely in your place, right? I try to do that. I try to understand what students are going through and what our teachers and our staff are going through. But, I'm not saying it's an easy process.
So, Mr. LaFavers, I know the big question with everybody is, what are your thoughts about going back to school, and what does that look like for our school, and what is the talk of the administrator's office regarding that?
Well, I think most people I talk to want to get back to school. I think not just is instruction enhanced face-to-face, but also the social aspect. I think we're all missing that. But we've got to be smart about it. The coronavirus is a real thing. It's it's more contagious than the flu. Because it's novel, we don't have immunity to it like we do some other things. And so we have to be real careful as well at this time, not just for ourselves, but also for the people we bring it home to. We have students who may listen to this call who have someone in their house with pre-existing conditions. So not just yourself that you're being mindful for, but also those people who live with you.
All right, so transitioning into our question part of the town hall, the big question around this whole thing is, what is KDE, the Kentucky Department of Education, saying for the state regulations on how we reopen the school year?
Well, it's currently evolving. Yesterday on a webcast, they talked about transportation differently than they had even a week earlier. A week earlier they said you could only occupy every other seat with one student or that student's family. And yesterday they started talking about how you could put students from different households on the same seat as long as they were wearing masks. And so the guidance is changing and evolving. That's why we have put off making a decision until July the 10th. That is the day that we're planning to announce the decision for next school year, is because, number one, we want to see how the guidelines from KDE, the Kentucky Department of Education, the governor's office, how those evolve. And also we want to pay attention to what does the summer heat and humidity do to the coronavirus. Some experts say that the summer heat and humidity is going to wipe it out. I think that's optimistic. I hope that's the case. Some people say it's going to act like a backstop, which just simply means it's going to slow the summer heat and humidity is going to slow the coronavirus down, and we'll start seeing fewer cases. And then some people say it's not going to affect the coronavirus at all. So we're going to watch the summer to see what happens to the coronavirus, and we're going to pay attention to the guidelines as they evolve. And then on July 10th, we're going to make a final announcement about school next year.
All right, and further on with this question, a lot of kids like going to school, but some, have a few struggles. So how likely is it that there's going to be an opt-in for an online learning environment?
Well, we've been talking through, I don't know if y'all got a slide on that, but the different options we've been considering are basically 4, and that's one of them. So I don't know if y'all want to bring that slide up, and we can.
Yeah, here's the slide.
So here they are, and so here's how you end up with these 4 different options. The first one's is just regular school. It's what we've always done. We would go to school on August 12th with maybe just a few, conditions in place in terms of cleaning and sanitizing, things like that. Now, for that option to be the one, the coronavirus would have to really get slowed down this summer, maybe even eliminated, like just wiped out, for us to be able to just go back to school, regular school format. The second one is a shelter in place, which most likely would come from the governor. He would say, we're not going to have in-person school. You've got to do it from home like we did in March, April, May. I don't get a sense from the governor's office that he's seriously considering that this time, but it's something that could happen maybe in the fall, winter. The third one is this opt-in that Daniel was referencing. And the opt-in most likely is that the coronavirus did not get, the heat and humidity didn't do much to it. But we don't have a shelter-in-place order from the governor. So if those 2 conditions are in place, then we would look at the opt-in hybrid. And the opt-in hybrid would be giving our students and their families the option of a true virtual school, which we took some steps towards a true virtual school March, April, and May, but it was still kind of like what we call NTI, non-traditional instruction. So when you pivot more towards virtual, it feels more like you're in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
So we would try to pivot further towards virtual school in the opt-in hybrid, give students a choice to pick that option over the physical school if they choose, or they could choose the physical school. They would have those options. And then in the physical school, there would probably be pretty heavy considerations for the coronavirus, which would probably in the opt-in hybrid include masks, temperature checks when you walk in the building, social distancing during class, between classes, et cetera. The opt-in hybrid probably has those kind of components in it. The last option is one that a lot of districts are considering, but I think probably has some issues, and that's the AB hybrid or the AB schedule. And that is simply that you go to the physical school on Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday, and you learn from home on Tuesday, Thursday, every other Friday. Some have been thinking about maybe this week you go to school, the next week you're virtual, then you go back to school. Anyway, you get the point. AB is half the students. So at Boyle County High School, 900 students, there'll be 450 there at any given time, and the other 450 will be learning from home. So that's a 4th option. We may use it, but it's not the one we're most serious about. We're most serious about those first 3.
Okay, so let's say we do go back and either here, I'll stop sharing this, but let's just say we do go back in either the opt-in or the regular school options. What would like break and assemblies and lunch look like? Would those be like social distanced, or what necessary precautions would you take in those situations?
Well, and that speaks to how the guidance is changing. So a couple weeks ago from the governor's office, they were really suggesting that you use sack lunches every day. You go back to your classroom. But then yesterday they put some guidance out that allows for you to use your cafeteria. Now, I don't know if students can sit across from each other. I don't know exactly how that would work yet. Would there have to be a seat between you? I'm not sure, It sounds like there's some possibilities of us using the cafeteria now. So what we're talking about specifically is the opt-in hybrid here. The shelter in place, you'd be at home, and in a regular school, we probably wouldn't have to worry about this, right? So when we talk about these things, we're talking about the opt-in hybrid. So yeah, the cafeteria is a possibility. Now assemblies, I think we would probably restrict in the opt-in hybrid. We would restrict those, to a point almost to eliminate them. I don't think you would create situations that are more difficult to social distance if you're in the opt-in hybrid. So that's that one. And then class changes. I mean, I think it's advisable if you can avoid them to do so. I don't think a high school can. Elementary certainly can. You could rotate teachers to the students instead of having students rotating to the teachers. Maybe you could do that in middle school. I think middle school's up in the air to me how that would work, but high school's probably got to have class change. So I think the guidelines I read are anytime you can't create 6 feet of separation between students, you have to wear masks. So in the opt-in hybrid, during class change, all students would have to have masks on. So I think that's how you would do that.
So if we do go back to school and, in the regular school or even the opt-in hybrid, so would there be a limit on how many people can be in a class at one time? Would we have to put desks 6 feet apart, wear masks all the time in the classroom? How does that look? Groups, a lot of classes rely on group work to get some things achieved and learned. So how does that look?
So we've actually done some modeling on this, and so classroom size varies across the district. Some of your elementary school classrooms are only 700 square feet, whereas the new middle school, all the classrooms are designed around 800. I think your high schools are probably 750 to 800. Now some of the classrooms are really large. Ms. Feistrecher, who's on the call, she's got a large classroom. I know Eli Edwards' classroom is massive. I don't know if y'all remember, if y'all been in it, right? So it really varies depending on the size of the classroom. But a 750 student classroom, we felt real comfortable with around 17 students and probably as many as 20. And, so it depends on how big the classroom space is. If you're in the opt-in hybrid and you're creating social distancing, we've got a little more work to do on that. But yeah, we will have to reduce some of the classes. I think. I believe that's going to be true. Not drastically, but by a little bit. We'll have to try to get our class sizes down a little bit.
Well, if we go into the opt-in hybrid, that might just end up being done for you by people staying home, which would be nice.
Exactly. That's what I anticipate happening. Is that and we've talked about two different scenarios with the opt-in hybrid. One is that very few students opt into the virtual academy, maybe 40 or 50 across the entire district. Well, that looks way different than if it's 400 or 500 students who opt in, right? So
yeah,
we've been playing out both those scenarios, and we're going to find out in early July how many students would choose it.
This is just it's not like one of the questions that were asked. It's just for me. What would you be able to switch from the opt-in? Or not the opt-in, sorry. Would you be able, like if at the beginning of the year in the opt-in hybrid, you decided you want to go to school, and then when it hit November or December and people were starting to get colds, could you switch to online school? As a student, would you be able to make that decision, or how does that,
we talked about two different things. So, when I say we've got a committee working on this made up of every school's got a representative, and there's representatives from the district. We bring in our health department director, Brent Blevins, as well. So that's when I say we've talked about, that's the group I'm referencing. So to your point, we've talked about the possibility that at 4 times a year, we would let students select virtual versus the physical building. So the first time would be in July. And when you make that commitment, you're committing to doing that for August, September, all the way to fall break. Fall break being the second time you make the commitment. That commitment is for October, November, all the way to Christmas break. At Christmas, you make the commitment. That one runs through spring break, and then at spring break, you make your final one. And each of those, you could change your placement, right? We talked about that. The other thing we've talked about is letting students change their placement at any time. The issue with any time is that if massive numbers of kids start pivoting around we would have to move staff on the fly. It would be very difficult to do.
Okay.
So that's why we're thinking around 4 times during the year where you can make a decision.
Yeah, because I could see where flip-flopping in between virtual or in classroom could be very messy when it comes, getting things actually accomplished in the classroom.
Similar to that, a lot of colleges, I'm sure you have heard this before, but a lot of colleges are going where they'll go from the beginning of the year to fall break or Thanksgiving, and then they're just like letting off until later in the year to try to avoid the flu season and I guess coronavirus season at this point. Is that anything that's ever come into consideration?
We have considered it. One of the things that we have to take into consideration, though, is our families and our parents who work. And so we actually built a schedule around the idea that we would be off, or we would have maybe some virtual during November, December, January, February, but not have students in the building. Because this year is going to be very confusing in that you've got the flu circulating and the coronavirus circulating and knowing which one you're dealing with. I do think, I'm not one to plug the flu vaccine, probably my first time in my life I've ever plugged it. But anyway, I'm going to do it today. I think that people should really seriously think about it because, that way if you start showing symptoms, if you've had the flu vaccine, the chances that it's the flu are reduced. And it becomes a little more clear what you have. So that's one of the reasons you would consider that. One of the reasons you wouldn't consider it, taking November, December, January, February off, is because parents working.
Okay.
And add a little bit to what we're talking about here. So, you're talking about limit people in the classroom. Will you guys have to add teachers if you need to divide students between classes?
Well, that's tough. We probably will have to do some of that, but you've got a budget you've got to pay attention to too. And we're not going to have more money next year. We're going to have less. The coronavirus will reduce our funding some because state tax revenues are going to go down and maybe local property tax revenues go down. So all that means is we're going to have less money coming in to do all the things we need to do with. So we're going to need to try to use the staff. We have 400 employees in the district. We're going to need to try to use those 400 employees to meet whatever objectives we have. Now, we've got a good cash bank account, so to speak, right? The amount of money we have in our bank account is really good in Boyle. So we could spend some of that if needed to get through the year. We're not opposed to that, but we would try to do it with the 400 employees we have.
Okay. So this is just a question for a specific student. She asked, or he or she asked, will there be any extra help for students taking AP classes if we are going to be in an online situation? Will those students that are at home when they're taking advanced courses, will they have access to getting extra help if they need it?
So that was one we've got to really think through. I think that's a good point the student makes there. So let's say there's 20 students at the high school in the virtual academy. Well, we probably are going to figure out a way to just live feed the AP classes she's referencing straight to the student, maybe share a stipend to work with the student after hours. However, if there's like 100, 150 students at the high school taking advantage of this, it becomes complicated to do what I just described because there's, how many hours a day can a teacher, if they've got, a lot of students in the virtual academy, a lot of students in their physical classroom, trying to do all that at once becomes complicated. So I think we've got to first know how many students are selecting the virtual academy if we pick the opt-in hybrid, and then build a plan for that. But we have to pay attention in our planning to AP, advanced placement students, no doubt about that.
Moving a little bit away from the classroom perspective, a big concern of a lot of people is what is the sports going to look like this fall? So, are we going to be able to have football games? And a lot of this comes from the state regulations, I'm guessing, or KHSAA. But, are we going to be allowed to have a student section? That's big for seniors. And, will we have to have it with social distancing? So what does that look like for athletics this fall?
As of right now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jax. What did you say?
As of right now.
As of right now.
Because we know how all these things change.
So let's talk about participation first, then we'll talk about spectators and fans. So regarding participation, the KHSAA put out some guidelines last week, and so we're aware of them. We've been talking. I talked to Kyle Wynn on the phone yesterday, and what we're doing is, until we have a board meeting on June the 11th, in the KHSAA guidelines, it asks you to take your plan to the board. So the first 2 weeks, it doesn't let you do much anyway. It lets coaches just basically conference with kids. Is the way I understand the guidelines. There's not a lot you can do. Really, you can begin doing things on June 15th. So we've asked each coach to present what they would like to do this summer and submit that to the board on June the 11th for the board's consideration. I've also asked Kyle Wynn to come up with a 3-page document, thereabouts, that has specific guidelines for all teams to adhere to during the summer. And so all that will go to the board on June the 11th, and then that will be the document we work off of, or the documents we work off of for the summer. And so that'll get us through conditioning, and that'll get us through some training and all that. And then we get into the fall, into August, we start talking about, games and things of that nature. And by then, hopefully we'll have more guidance from from KHSAA regarding games. Now, as far as spectators go, there's 2 scenarios we played out. One is we would try to figure out how to have a live audience at games, which would include a student section, but maybe spacing people out. I don't know. It depends on what the coronavirus does this summer. If the coronavirus gets wiped out, we might just let people come in and view like normal. If the coronavirus is still thriving, then we probably would try to create social distancing, but have a physical crowd. I think that's the most likely scenario, honestly, is that we would try to have a physical audience. But the other thing is, I've talked, before we got on the call here, I was talking to you all about trying to expand BCSN, having two different crews who go out, and on a given night we might be live feeding a couple different games. And I'm pretty serious about that. I wasn't just throwing that out as something to talk about before we came on live. I was serious about the idea that may be something we come to you all in July and say to Michelle Feistrecher, and then she's getting with the Jack Lammies of the world, and Jack. I'm sorry about that. But she's getting with her students. My point is, and she's working through how to do that, how to have 2 crews.
This is just, could there be distinction between sports? So I play soccer, and football is obviously a very important sport in this community, but because there's so many players so close to each other in a football game, would there be a difference between a football game and, say, a soccer game or a baseball game where there's no contact? Is there going to be could there be some distinction between that, or is that even your decision?
I think soccer is a little bit different than football, but I mean, that's a very physical sport, though. Mm-hmm. Jack, let's be honest about that.
Yeah. That's why I threw
golf's a different one. You all may have watched Tiger and Phil and Peyton and
Tom Brady
play, and I don't know how good a job they did with social distancing, but they could have done maybe better than they did, honestly. But you can do it in golf, I think, and that's a fall sport. Volleyball, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's maybe some consideration of sports, no doubt, but probably more than likely it's going to come closer to a blanket statement from the district about participation and spectators.
This is just a suggestion. I don't know if you all can do it or if you all have the capabilities to do it, but I've been watching some soccer on television that they have no fans, and they play like recorded stadium sounds to give still a home crowd feel. Could that be something that we can do? Because I know if there's no, because being having a home field advantage is sometimes a big deal for a home team. So if we could record some stadium sounds and get them played, is that a thing we could do? I'm just wondering.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that, but first I thought you were talking about something BCSN would do, like you all be piping in sound in your broadcast, but
Yeah, we can
you
do
were talking about the home field advantage. And so, yeah, that's we should present that one to Kyle Wynn and start working on that. But really, my hope is that we can have a live audience. You want your family to be there watching you, and maybe if we can do it and just create social distancing, I think that's a pretty good way to go. Football games would be the most difficult because there's times we actually fill the whole bleachers up. So we would have to maybe even limit ticket sales to football games to half capacity or something, which would probably drive more traffic to your live feed, which would be awesome too.
So Mr. LaFavers, we were talking about sports here. You said that for us to know how the in-classroom setup's going to look like will be decided, or the district will announce on July the 12th, correct?
July 10th.
And then July 10th. So when you said KHSAA released a date in June, so when in June would they know how conditioning, or maybe even when will that date
We'll make a
be?
decision on student participation in athletics on June the 11th, which is from tomorrow. And that decision will carry pretty much the entire summer. Beyond that, we're going to be paying attention to KHSAA and trying to build any future guidelines off of the guidance they give us.
So, Mr. LaFavers, what start date is most likely as of right now? Will it be early, late August, or even late July? How does that look right now?
We surveyed students, parents, and our staff. Man, we got a lot of responses. I think students were nearly 500, and parents maybe 800 or so. And resoundingly, what people were saying is leave the start date on August 12th. We were considering an earlier option of August 3rd, which was the earliest we thought we could start with the new middle school because it won't be ready before then. And the reason we were considering starting earlier was just because if the heat and humidity does slow down the coronavirus, you want to take advantage of those hot, humid months. But we also, when we survey staff, students, and parents, we listen to them. And what they said was leave it alone. It was like 75, 80% of all stakeholders in all three of those groups said leave it alone on August the 12th. So that's what we're going to do.
I like it. It's important, when you're talking about those surveys, you're letting the people's voice be heard, and you're really taking them into consideration when it goes forward.
Yeah, we're lucky to have that at this school. Some great leadership up there. Thank you, Ms. LaFavers. So let's assume that school does start in an opt-in option or a regular school option. What would have to occur for us to change to a different option? So let's say we start in regular. What has to occur for us to switch to an opt-in? Would it have to be a spike, or what data would you guys go off of?
Yeah, so you can imagine a couple scenarios. One is that the coronavirus really gets slowed down this summer, and we start in a regular format, and all the students are coming to school. And then in the fall, the case count goes way up in Kentucky, and you get a shelter-in-place order from the governor. So then we're pivoting towards a shelter-in-place virtual school for everyone. Another way it could happen is we could open the year in an opt-in hybrid, where you've got 80 or 90% of your students maybe in the physical building, and let's say 10% virtual. But then you get to November, December, and the case count goes up, and we say to every student, we're going to do virtual for a while. We do that for a few weeks, and then we go back to the physical school with the majority of students, and those 10% who were virtual stay virtual. So I think there's going to be things like that happen next school year, honestly. So our planning needs to show that we're able to pivot. We need to think through all these different scenarios and be ready to pivot on the dime, just real quick. And that's what we're working on.
Would that be your decision or the state decision?
I think it's a lot of people's decision. So, I mean, definitely I would play into it to a degree, but, the governor's going to play into it. The commissioner of education is going to play into it. Our board is going to play into it. I listen to the staff. I listen to your parents. I listen to you. I mean, we're creating this situation today, right? And so I'm going to continue doing that. So really, we want as many voices in the decision making as possible.
How much would it have to change? Would there have to be a greatly significant change, or what has to, like, specifically in the numbers of cases, or is it going to be numbers of deaths? What measurement is the state going to go off of, and like what data source?
Well, so like I watch I don't watch the governor's news conference every day. I don't think any of us have to do that every day. Very few maybe people do, but I do pay attention to the numbers daily. So yesterday, I think it was reported 150 new cases, and the last reporting before that maybe it was 250. So it's been fluctuating in between 150 and 250 in Kentucky. Pretty much the entire time this has been going on. We had maybe a day or two where it was 400, but number of cases has been around 150 to 250. So if we get to August and that's what it looks like, we're probably going to issue, well, obviously on July 10th, if it still looks like that, we're going to give the opt-in hybrid as the option most likely. Because what that means is that we've had a consistent case count. It hadn't slowed because of the heat and humidity. Give people the opt-in hybrid. And then I think you would just stay in that situation unless one of two things happen. One is that something's happening in our schools that makes us have to react to it, right? So a lot of students in our schools are showing symptoms. We're having to send them home, and we're having to get people tested. And something's happening in Boyle County schools that's elevating our concern. And then the other thing would be that something's happening in our state. So the 150 to 250 turns into a 500, for several days in a row. And at that point, you may get something from your governor issuing to all of us to go shelter in place. The previous situation I described, where it's just in the Boyle County school system or in our own community, an elevated number, is probably a decision we make, and it would be myself with the board primarily.
So you're basically handling it a little bit like you handle the flu season when it comes around, but with a little bit more precaution because of how quickly it spreads between, individuals. So it's basically the same concept in reality. Exactly right.
And we're going to have 4 nurses next school year, and really super well trained. The new health coordinator, they just hired the person yesterday, is Nicole Brown. You all may know Miss Brown. She's a nurse at the middle school and high school. And so she's going to be coordinating health services. So we're going to listen to her as well. She's very smart. She's a nurse practitioner. And so she's going to play into any decision-making also. But you're right. It's going to be a lot like the flu. If it was only our community or our school system that was having an issue, it would be handled similar to the flu. If it's statewide, then it's probably an order from the governor.
So from a middle school or even a high school perspective, how will the way we change classes look? Coming in the morning, do we go immediately to class? Do we wait for the bell to ring to go to class? How does that look?
Yeah, we haven't worked out all those details, but I can imagine in the opt-in hybrid, I think that's the one we're talking about here. Yeah. If that's what we end up going with, I would imagine that we're going to cut out students congregating in the lobby and have them go straight to their class. So you're probably going to make your way into the building. You'll have your temperature checked at some point, maybe before you get on the bus. If you ride the bus, if you get out of your car with your parents, before you walk in the building. If you're a car rider coming in towards Ms. Feistrecher's side of the building, you get your temperature checked there. Now you've made your way into the building, you'll go straight to your classroom. I imagine in the opt-in hybrid, it looks more like that.
So, kind of similar to getting your temperature tested. Will you require testing for the coronavirus to go to school? Will everybody have to get tested, or is that
so the only thing about testing is I think there's two ways to think about testing. One is you say, well, we're going to test everybody to see if people have it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how long is that even good for? I mean, you know, a day, 2 days? Because you think about it, we test everyone, and then you all go out and live your lives, right? You go to different communities. You see people from other communities. There's a point where that's not going to help us much, right? So, but now there's a difference in we have students who are symptomatic. So we have a student who makes their way to the high school office to see the nurse, and they're showing symptoms that are akin to the coronavirus, getting that student tested, some way, shape. I'm not saying we haven't worked out the details on that yet, but I think getting that student tested, and then if they have it, contact tracing is smart. So it would probably, the testing would look more like that.
So a little bit about, class changes and back onto that and talking about student, how they come in the mornings. How does the student for high school drivers, how does that look? The parking lot sometimes can be crowded before school and sometimes a little bit after as well. So how does that look of people interacting within the parking lot?
Yeah, so that's still part of the school environment. So our expectations would not change there. And basically the general rule is I'm understanding it today, is that if we can create social distancing 6 feet or greater, then we don't have to wear masks. But if we cannot, then the students, the staff, masks at that time. And so the situations you're describing, particularly take class change. You cannot create 6 feet of social distancing during class change, so everyone would have to have masks on. I think that's how that works. But then when you get in your class, if we have the seats set up 6 feet apart, you take your mask off. And then when you go back out, you have to put it on again, right? So I think that's how it works in the Optin hybrid.
What is so with the masks, what are you all thinking as to making sure the students keep them on? Like, what if, I don't know, just some kid wants to take it off? Is there going to be a punishment for that? Or you may not have an answer to this yet. It's a strange question, but.
Well, I think probably the school would have to set up their own standards for this, right? Kind of like when we gave you all Chromebooks, and we gave every student Chromebooks, and people were worried that kids were going to destroy their Chromebooks. Well, some of that happened. We had some students who destroyed their Chromebooks, but the vast majority of you have taken care of them, and we let you take them home, and we let you keep them over the summer, and it works great. I mean, most people do the right thing. And so I don't know that you want to make your rules around the 1% who won't. Okay. You've got to deal with the 1%. We had to fix the Chromebooks and deal with the 1% who destroyed their Chromebooks, but the 99% took care of them. And so your rules have to be thoughtful about those 99%, right? So I think that's how you would do it. Masks is that, we would have to monitor it. We'd have to ask our staff to monitor it, and we'd have to have some clear expectations with our students. And then my guess is the vast majority would do what we want. If they don't, we'll have to deal with it at that time. But I don't believe the Boyle County kids I know are going to, number one, we're not asking to do something that's just crazy. We're asking to do something that protects them and their peers. And so I believe that they would listen to us.
All right, moving to a little bit more specific questions about certain classes at high school level, or even at the middle school. You got weightlifting, you have, PE classes, physical education. Then you have, let's say, shop or cooking classes. You have all these different type of elective classes that are kind of hard to social distance in or require, sharing the same tools, sharing the same equipment. How does that look as far as, does that mean cutout classes to, where you can clean utensils or equipment in between, or how does that look?
So, I've been talking about the group that's been, the committee that's been working on this, and, it's got school representatives, every school is represented, but it also has subcommittees, and there's a subcommittee working on the details you're all talking about. They have not gotten that detailed yet. So like that, getting down to a classroom, like what does the weightlifting class at Boyle County High School do? They haven't gotten to those details. And I would think they would sit down with Jeff Hester and work out his class with him and say, Jeff, here are the things you have to have in your class. You have to create social distancing, 6 feet. Of course, we're talking about the hybrid here. If you cannot, you have to have masks on. And so then Jeff would have to think through, how do I conduct my class with the guidelines that we provide them. But we haven't gotten that far yet. Our next meeting is next week. I believe it's Wednesday at 1 o'clock. It's either Wednesday or Thursday at 1 o'clock. And we're going to continue the conversations, and we'll have 2 or 3 more before July 10th. And by then, hopefully 99% of these details we're talking about will have been ironed out.
Alrighty, and another question I feel like everybody's been wondering, and I'm sure this is even for teachers, to parents, to students. Fall break, spring break, Christmas break, how does that look? Some people think fall break and winter break and spring break can be helpers, to slow the spread, to give everybody a break from being around each other. How does that look as far as the schedule is right now?
Well, once again, we asked that question in our survey, and resoundingly, none of the stakeholders want us to touch fall break and spring break. Now, the parents and the staff were okay with us shortening fall break, but the students hated the idea of shortening it, to be honest. So you all, in particular, you students really do not want people messing with their breaks. So right now, we aren't planning to affect, have any impact on spring break, fall break. But things could change. If things change drastically, we may consider all options. Now we're just listening to the survey.
Jack, do you have any more questions for
Yeah,
Mr. LaFavers?
I think I have one. So, what would field trips, like, would those be allowed, or what would those look like for anyone who takes a field trip?
Yeah, field trips. I think in the Optin hybrid, we would honestly, I believe those would be limited. It's unfortunate. I hate the idea of that. We would try to bring field trips to us. So instead of going to some kind of Shakespeare festival, we would bring Shakespeare actors to the school.
But
yeah.
How would you be social distancing in that event? So would that be like an assembly type thing, or is that
so I can imagine, and I don't know exactly how this would work, but we would probably in the Optin hybrid instruct the staff to try to think about how can you do, instead of going out, how can you bring people to you? So let's say that at the high school they've got some kind of event with colleges. Normally they take 100 kids on a college tour, and so instead of that they bring the college folks to us, and then they set those folks up in the gym in different stations, and then instead of putting 100 students in the gym at one time, maybe we do 20, and we throughout the day we rotate the 20 different students at a time through. We would try to think through it like that. I think the hypothetical I just gave you doesn't really exist. I don't think we do exactly what I just described. But you get my point, is that we would try, I think in the Optin hybrid, to think about field trips differently.
Mr. LaFavers, we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to, for everybody to keep in mind these important dates. We have July the 10th is going to be when the district's going to be giving out their plan for the reopening of the school year. Correct, Mr. LaFavers?
Correct.
And then for athletics, KHSCA and the district is going to be giving a plan for the summer plan on June the 11th, which is next week.
Correct.
So keep in mind for that date as well to see how your summer athletics are going to be conditioning and training. And as far as anything else goes, remember to look at all the different options that they are going with right now. The regular school, the completely shelter at home, or the Optin hybrid. Keep those all in mind. That's all on the district. And, keep in mind that we're all here for each other. We're all trying to keep each other safe. We want to stop the spread, but we also want everybody to get a good education and get the experience that, that I enjoyed even when I was, I'm graduated now, but I want everybody to get the experience that I had with my peers, with my teachers, with even athletics. It's all a wonderful, mix that makes everything go around in the world. So, Jack, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so make sure you guys are checking the Boyle County Schools Twitter. Is that what, Mr. LaFavers, is that what you were, or Miss Wade? I think that's what they were releasing these questions on. So make sure you guys are looking out for more of these town hall type things. I don't know if there will be any more, but make sure you guys are looking out for that. And I know the school wants to hear your voice. It wants to hear everybody's voice because everybody matters in this community.
Hey, let me ask this question real quick. We've got Stephanie Wade. I think she can come in on the call here, but I would like the students who listen in to have the ability to give us some ideas about the things they've heard, what they like, what they don't like. some way we can put that out there on the website or on Twitter, where students can have a forum they can access and then give us feedback. I would like to have that feedback. Stephanie, is there a way to do that?
Yeah, we can do that. Gentlemen, I'll actually send that to you guys, and I'll let you all send that on your Twitter. Share it with all your followers, get feedback, solicit feedback from your friends, so that we can hear even further from you.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody to do that as well. I mean, you can't really complain much unless you tell everybody what you want done. So when we release this on Twitter, it'll be on BCSN 1920 is our Twitter username. So make sure we'll release that on here. We're going to get that changed to 2021 here. That's outdated now, so we'll get that fixed.
Daniel,
Jack.
Could you put it on this? This is going up on YouTube, correct?
Yeah. So
could you put it
we can also put we'll put the link in the description as well.
Hey, I will say this. I'm a huge fan of Jack and Daniel and the whole BCSN concept. And I got to go up in the studio, maybe, I don't know what you call it, but during a few football games, I was there when you had Jacob
Matt
Tammy.
Jones.
Yeah, Matt Jones and Jacob Tammy. I was there for both of those to watch a little bit. You guys are pros. Don't know what you're planning to do with your lives, but man, you're good at what you're doing for Boyle County Schools, and I'm proud of you. So, good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. LaFavers.
If anybody is interested in joining BCSN, I know we're looking to expand because of this whole deal. Please contact Coach Phi if you can. We're always looking for more people to join our family.
Thank you again, Mr. LaFavers.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.